It's stating the obvious that trailers are carefully crafted to trick us into seeing a movie, regardless of the quality. As frustrating as it may be when we're duped into watching something terrible, that's just the way marketing works and we have to accept it, right? Well, not exactly. Trailers for bad movies might dupe you from time to time, but if you know what to look out for, then you start to notice a number of red flags that inadvertently tell you a film is going to be awful. Some of these are obvious. If the trailer features atrocious dialogue, terrible acting, and dodgy special effects, then you can be sure the finished product isn't going to be any better. But other red flags require a little more industry know-how to spot, where editing techniques, sound design, and other technical traits betray the film's true awfulness. So, with that in mind, I'm Ellie with Whatculture, here with 10 ways trailers let you know a movie is secretly awful. Number 10, the words from the producers of. When an accomplished filmmaker returns behind the camera after a huge success, it's not unusual for the trailer to declare, from the director of. It announces a mark of quality and, more to the point, a standard of authorship and level of creativity that the director is renowned for. Now, don't get me wrong, we're not saying producers don't work hard juggling a movie's budget, but when it comes to a mark of quality, they're far from the best benchmark to go by. Even worse is the trailer which throws in the line from the studio that brought you. There isn't a studio in existence which hasn't made at least one bad movie. Even the great Pixar have the unfortunate Cars 2 on their filmography, so as a measure of quality, it's about as useful as a chocolate teapot. They're hoping you won't realise that they're hyping their movie on the reputation of a much better film, but don't let them fool you, chances are they're promoting a real stinker. Number 9, quotes from questionable review sources. Some truly awful films can still plaster glowing praise from the world's media on their posters so long as they don't really care where it came from. For example, an exhilarating thrill ride, Horse and Hound. An out-of-this-world adventure, Mumsnet. Honestly, it's not even that bad, Whatculture.com. And let's not forget the practice of taking the words of big-name reviewers and publications completely out of context. For instance, using the quote "amazing" on the poster when the full sentence actually reads, "It's amazing how rubbish like this gets made." You know, the marketing team's gotta do what they've gotta do, but if you need a good rule of thumb, always check the name of the source. If they're all from places you've never heard of or wouldn't trust, then give the film a miss. Number 8, the title in bold red fonts. As David Fincher has demonstrated in many of his movies, delivering a good title screen is something of an art form when done well. The font selected, coupled with lighting, particle effects, and a hint of animation, can really emphasize the tone and feel of the movie. By the same token though, really bad movies similarly feature titles which reflect the low standards of the film being advertised. To the untrained eye, these bold titles are intended to let the audience know that the movie is going to be fun and exciting, but to anyone remotely savvy about graphic design, they indicate cheap, lazy production values, which is inevitably reflected in the film. Number 7, a bass drop is used more than once. In the 1990s, the ubiquitous annoying noise featured in trailers for bad movies was the record scratch. Then there was the bwah noise from Christopher Nolan's Inception, which became the most overused sound in movie trailers ever, but now it's the bass drop that has trumped the contenders to become the most excessively used noise in movie trailers, often in circumstances where such a noise really isn't called for. From action movies to raucous comedies, the bass drop is featured in films across the spectrum, for no other reason than Burks think it sounds cool. Number 6, bodily fluid jokes and pratfalls. As independent movies have proven many times, American filmmakers are more than capable of making comedies which are sharply observed and full of wit and invention, which has been proved by films such as Listen Up, Philip and Love is Strange. When it comes to mainstream Hollywood, however, this nuance is often lacking. Cleverness is replaced with crassness, and jokes about feces, periods, farts and obesity are often passed off as being funny. Look, that's not to say that fart jokes and their erstwhile cousin, the pratfall, can't be funny, but if the trailer offers very little else, then chances are there's very little else going on in the film itself. Number 5, establishing shots overload. Establishing shots are something of a necessary evil in filmmaking. A movie needs to set up a scene so the audience is aware of the spatial context in which it takes place, even though they're kind of visual filler akin to the descriptive waffle a first-year creative writing student might use to pad out a short story. Now, the finished movie can be forgiven for following the formulaic use of establishing shots, but there's really no excuse for a short trailer that's designed to sell a film's best assets, and it's littered with countless establishing shots from start to finish. If there's one thing to suggest that this film is going to be underwhelming visually, it's a trailer edit that tries to create a sense of scope and awe where it doesn't actually exist. A prime example of this can be found in Fantastic Four. You've got wheat fields, you've got cityscapes, you've got mountains, the Pentagon, you've got skyscrapers, you've got this weird suburban house thing, all in the space of about 2 minutes. It's almost as if there was nothing else of any real substance in the movie itself. How weird. Number 4, repeatedly fading to black. First things first, there are some trailers for good movies which use this fade to black trick. It's getting very common though, and if you've been to the cinema lately, you'll probably have noticed. Used occasionally, the fade to black can add to the feeling of anticipation. Used repeatedly, and the studio is clearly over-egging the pudding and creating a falsely heightened sense of anticipation. The second Man of Steel trailer, for example, is 2.5 minutes long, and somehow manages to cut to black more than 20 times. That is roughly one fade to black every 9 seconds. I mean, what are you doing? Just forget about it, do something new. Now the effect they generate is usually pretty good, but just like we have rules, unbreakable rules, about how much text you should ever have on screen at one time, there needs to be a self-imposed limit on transitions like this too. Number 3, heavy use of off-screen dialogue. When it comes to the use of off-screen dialogue in a movie trailer, particularly when it rarely matches up to a character's lips moving on screen, there's a distinct possibility that the lines you're hearing are cheats. An actual editor of movie trailers elaborated on how this worked during a discussion on Reddit, explaining how they're either lines that have been cobbled together that don't actually exist that way in the film, or they're lines that have been squeezed into an actor's mouth when they're saying something completely different in the movie. Okay, cool, that's clever, but why? Well, according to our same industry insider, such decisions usually indicate a lackluster movie because the editor or studio is fabricating something, as opposed to letting the natural material work on its own. Also, a bonus point here, if the main character in the film has very little dialogue in the trailer, it's usually a red flag worth keeping an eye out for, since this suggests an awful performance, and the studio has cut it. Number 2, the use of audience interactions. Believe it or not, there are actual academic papers out there discussing this very technique, but we won't bore you too much with all of that. But a good movie trailer should be edited to capture the essence of the movie it is trying to promote using footage from the film without giving too much away. The last thing you want to see is shots of people watching the film, but that hasn't stopped a few horror movies using audience footage for their trailers, as if watching people reacting to that tired old genre trope, the jump scare, is going to entice people into the cinema. Anyone who sincerely believes that these sound bites weren't carefully selected to emit anything other than glowing praise should consider looking up the word naive in the dictionary. Number 1, giving away a major plot point or the entire plot. Getting a feel for the narrative content of a film is something that good movie trailers strike a balance with. They give you an idea of what the film is about, but leave you eager to find out more when you actually watch the movie. I mean, this is literally the entire reason for the existence of a trailer. So why would you give away your biggest moment in a 3-minute sample of your movie? Well, as it turns out, there actually seems to be method to this madness. According to director Robert Zemeckis, it's because of McDonald's. Well, kind of. Apparently, Hollywood looked at the success of McDonald's and thought it was because you know exactly what you're going to get. Everybody knows the McDonald's menu, there's no surprises, you just go in and order what you know you already like. Now I know this sounds a little bit dumb, and maybe it is, but The Amazing Spider-Man 2 and Terminator Genesis both put massive spoilers in their trailers, and they both... Oh, hang on a second. No, it turns out they were both critical disasters. Oh well,